Have you ever heard of the trial by water? A cruel, illogical, and terrifying practice used to identify witches during the darkest periods of history. Today we will dive into the details of this test, which was in reality more like a disguised death sentence. Grab a coffee, prepare for some discomfort, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more videos about the absurdities that have marked our history. The idea behind the trial by water was simple but horrifying. A person, usually a woman accused of witchcraft, was tied up and thrown into a lake or river. If she floated, she was deemed guilty, as it was believed that water, a pure element, would reject impure souls. On the other hand, if she sank, she was declared innocent. But more often than not, this meant her death by drowning before she could be rescued. In short, it was a no-win scenario. This practice was widely used during the Middle Ages and the early modern era, especially in parts of Europe and colonial America. The trial by water was part of a series of ordeals based on the belief that God or natural forces would reveal the truth. Other examples include the trial by fire, where the accused had to hold a hot iron or walk on burning coals. But none were as iconic as the trial by water. Now you might be wondering, who were the accused? Most of the time they were women, widows, healers, women considered strange, or those who somehow didn't conform to the social norms of the time. It took only a suspicious neighbor, an unexplained event, or even a dispute over land or inheritance for a woman to be accused of witchcraft. And what about the evidence of witchcraft? Well, it was absurd. A birthmark, unusual behavior, or even being fond of animals could be used as proof. In many cases, the trial by water was the final stage of a cruel process where the accused had already been weakened by days of torture and interrogation. The process was terrifying. The accused was partially stripped to prevent enchanted clothing from interfering with the test. Then she was bound, often with her thumbs tied to her ankles, and thrown into the water. Crowds would gather to watch, believing they were witnessing an act of divine justice. There are records of women who survived the trial by water, but their lives were far from saved. They were often lynched by the mob or sentenced to other forms of brutal punishment. And here's a grim curiosity. In some cases, ropes were used to rescue those who sank. But let's face it, this kindness was more of a performance than a genuine concern for the accused's life. It's important to remember that the trial by water was not an isolated practice, but part of a larger mentality of social control and oppression. History teaches us how dangerous it can be to mix irrational beliefs with systems of justice. If we look back at the past with horror, it should serve as a reminder we cannot let fear and intolerance govern our decisions. And don't be fooled, these lessons are still relevant. We still see justice fail and marginalized groups being persecuted, even if not in the same ways. And what about you? What do you think of this absurd practice? Share your thoughts in the comments. Which part of the story of the trial by water shocked you the most? Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and share it with friends. Because learning about the past is the first step to building a fairer and more humane future. See you next time.